For more than 30 years, computer science professor Erling Strand has been traveling the Hessdalen Valley in his native Norway, spending countless hours investigating a mystery that no one can explain. It's a phenomenon so rare that not many have ever captured it on film. But when it happens, Erling's camera and tripod have been there to record these eerie images. One of Erling's videos, taken on December 4th, 1999, shows a pulsating, flickering light that appears above the horizon. Another video shows what appears to be a single mysterious pulsating light. When we zoom in, the shape, size, and intensity seem to be fluctuating as these lights travel high above the mountains.
There was no natural thing which could make these lights. I found that very little scientific information existed.
Close-up photographs reveal what appears to be an amorphous, gas-like substance. But what are they? The lights have been observed since the 1930s, but investigative journalist MJ Benaya says it was the period between December 1981 to mid-1984 when the scientific world really took notice.
What makes Hessdalen very interesting is we don't know if this is some sort of naturally occurring phenomena. We don't know if this is a man-made phenomena. And we also don't know if this could have some sort of otherworldly answer.
While sightings of the lights are not as frequent as they once were, this has not stopped ufologists from believing that the lights are signs of extraterrestrial activity.
Some people believe that due to mineral deposits or the location of a specific mountain or valley, that UFOs are drawn to it, or that valleys and mountains play host to sort of underground bases for UFO pilots.
But researchers have recently come up with a more earthly explanation. The unusual lights may be caused by a natural battery buried deep underground, created by metallic minerals reacting with sulfur in the river running between them.
The area itself is very rich in minerals. For a very long time, mining operations have existed in the area, predominantly for minerals like copper and zinc, and these lights could be somehow connected to the mining operations that occur in the valley.
Researchers are so determined to figure out this phenomenon that in 1998, a permanent station called the Blue Box began monitoring the valley with a magnetometer, 2 black and white cameras, and 1 color camera. Clearly something strange is going on there. But what? We asked our experts to weigh in. Physics professor Matthew Shadaga says that since teams of scientists have been studying this phenomenon for decades, they've had plenty of time to eliminate several of the more mundane explanations.
We've already ruled out car, airplane, helicopter, because those objects don't fit the description of these lights, which have different behaviors, blinking on and off, changing shape, changing color.
While Shadaga says that the natural battery theory makes sense, it's still just a theory.
The natural minerals in the area may develop positive and negative charges naturally, like in your everyday battery. So if you have a strong enough electric field, you might end up with what look like lights in the sky. The downside of the natural battery theory is these minerals are not necessarily next to each other. They're separated by the river in the area.
Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio says another leading theory is that the lights are literally generated by the Earth.
The theory is that the lights are generated by some type of electrical energy coupled with some magnetic influences that ends up becoming visible in the air as naturally caused lights. In the same way that you scruff your feet on a carpet and touch something metal and you see a little spark between your finger and that metal thing, that might be able to occur on a larger scale. But I think that we're lacking information to say definitively what they are. So we don't know for sure exactly what we're seeing here. But it is a rather compelling video nonetheless.
Our verdict? We're calling this an unexplained phenomenon. While the theory that the geology of Norway is causing the Hessdalen lights is compelling, it is still only a theory. And it begets the question, why don't we see this battery effect around other similar geological areas? One thing is certain, more research is needed. And if you want to head to Norway to do it, they'll leave the lights on for you. February 2022, Alta, Norway. It's a clear afternoon in this quiet town 240 miles north of the Arctic Circle. A man is sitting in his car when he spots something unusual moving on the horizon and decides to record it. A bright white object is streaking across the sky. But take a closer look. It appears to be circular on one end with a small pointed tail on the other. Then, just a few miles away, a car dash cam also captures the strange white anomaly. While some may believe this is a UFO, according to journalist MJ Banias, this sighting has the hallmarks of an unusual 50-year-old event known as the Great Daylight Fireball.
In August of 1972, people reported seeing a very large, bright fireball in the sky. Many speculated that it was some sort of comet or meteorite or perhaps a piece of space debris that entered Earth's atmosphere.
But Banias also notes a key difference.
The fireball in the Utah incident left a long contrail. The tail of whatever this object is quite short. It doesn't leave a line of smoke behind it.
And that clue has led observers to another theory.
Norway is home to the Andoy Test Center, which is used by multiple countries to launch and test various new weapons and missiles that are in development.
But some fear it's a test from a far more hostile actor.
The Russians have made the claim that they actually used a hypersonic missile to take out a Ukrainian arms depot in March 2022. But there's no verifiable intelligence that confirms it.
Hypersonic missiles are a breakthrough technology that travel very fast and very low, making them nearly impossible to detect until they're about to hit their targets. Might the Russians have been testing one nearby? Now, supersonic means faster than the speed of sound, which is 761 miles per hour at sea level. But hypersonic? That is 5 times faster, over 3,800 miles per hour. What could be traveling that fast? Are we seeing leftovers from the formation of our solar system? Or possibly the latest game-changing military technology? Let's see what our experts have to say. We begin with video forensic analyst Michael Primo. Is this video even legit?
When authenticating evidence, the most reliable approach is to collect a known sample from the device and perform what's called a CRP test to make determinations about whether or not that particular video came from that particular device. I requested a reference sample be provided from the operator, and we were able to verify that the video can be considered authentic.
If it's real, then what could it be?
I think we're not looking at any kind of aircraft, whether it be commercial or any type of passenger aircraft, or drone or military. Just traveling too fast, but also there's obviously no discernible features. There's no wings, there's no tail section.
So if it's not a terrestrial craft, is it from space?
If, let's say, there was a satellite re-entering the Earth's atmosphere because it was defunct and no longer operational, you might see a breakup.
Today, there are about 5,000 satellites orbiting the Earth, and it's estimated about 300 objects in orbit fall back to Earth and burn up each year. But D'Antonio doesn't see one telltale sign in the video.
There's so many appendages, solar panels, satellite would be basically leaving parts behind through the entire process of re-entry. You would see a long trail of debris as it was re-entering the Earth's atmosphere.
But satellites aren't the only things that fall to Earth. Could we be seeing an event like the Great Daylight Fireball in 1972?
It's a very flat trajectory that, to me, is consistent with a hypersonic missile. In particular, the speed, the fact that it is moving within the Earth's atmosphere, it is traveling in a straight line, all consistent with a hypersonic missile.
There are 2 main types of hypersonic missiles. Hypersonic cruise missiles, which are boosted by a rocket to hypersonic speed, and then use an air-breathing engine called a scramjet to sustain that speed. And hypersonic gliding vehicles, which are launched from a rocket, but then glide into their target. If that's what this is, it's a rare video of a new and deadly weapon.
Another clue is towards the end of the video when you see that separation. It appears to be using a booster to make it travel extremely fast, but I did searches and was unable to find any recognized or declared hypersonic missile test, or frankly, any missile test in the area. So if we're looking at a missile test, we're looking at something that was done in secret.
Our verdict? We're going with hypersonic missile test. We think McMillan's observations are a close match to what we see in the visual evidence. But for sure, there are some lingering questions that need answering. Like, who fired it? Us or them? With the political situation in the world today, there doesn't seem to be any doubt this is something we're going to be seeing a lot more of. In October 2019, a team of divers sets off to explore a sunken World War II ship off the Norwegian coast. Instead, they see this. The footage shows the team in a close encounter with a huge, drifting, gelatinous blob. The video is played all over the world, and it's not lost on people that these are the exact waters the dreaded legendary sea monster called the Kraken was known to inhabit. Look at it up close. The giant floating orb is as big as a person, and when the divers turn their flashlights on it, it appears as if the sphere is filled with hundreds of thousands of tiny creatures. Also inside is an orange mass. Some speculate that this is a tentacle. Captain Nils Bodne says he's never seen anything like it in 25 years at sea.
We didn't know what it was, and as we were swimming closer, it was actually bigger and bigger. It was like an alien thing in the water.
Field researcher Ken Gerhardt speculates whether this orb could actually be the spawn of the Kraken.
So the legend of the Kraken is probably one of the most celebrated sea monsters of all time. Based on its physical descriptions, the multiple arms, the massive size, and just the reputation for being very malevolent and snatching sailors off of ships.
Legends say that the Kraken could devour a ship's entire crew at once. But despite its fearsome reputation, the monster also seemingly had its benefits. It allegedly swam accompanied by huge schools of fish. Brave fishermen could risk going near the beast to secure a bountiful catch. Unfortunately, Captain Bodne said his team didn't have much air left in their scuba tanks, so they could only document this encounter for a few minutes. But our experts had plenty of time. Let's see what they have to say. Our video forensics expert, Michael Primo, examines the footage to determine if it's too good to be real.
The way that the light bounces off and through this object helped us to authenticate this frame by frame. So at this spot, we can see, again, translucent behavior of the subject behind the object and then some sort of shadowing from his reflection. So I'm leaning more toward that this object was real.
So if it's not a hoax, what is it? Marine biologist Dr. Shay Conger weighs in.
It could be jelly or cnidarian, which is a stinging animal. However, sea jellies have really distinct organelles and stinging cells and anatomies. This doesn't have any really defined and clear organs.
But apparently there are other deep-sea organisms that look like gelatinous blobs.
Maybe it's some really large form of a hooded nudibranch.
Conger says nudibranchs are sea slugs that secrete a sweet smell, often compared to watermelon, for defense purposes. But they are typically only about 4 inches long. So if it's too blobby to be a jellyfish and too large to be a nudibranch, what's left? Could it be an embryo from the legendary Kraken? Maybe, in a way. The Kraken was an exaggerated version of an animal we now know to be real.
We really can attribute historical sightings of the Kraken to known squid species today, like the giant and colossal squid. I wouldn't say it's out of the frame of possibility.
In fact, we've seen live and dead versions of both species dating back to 1853. And it's believed they can grow to nearly 60 feet. So maybe it is a Kraken egg. But not so fast. After a DNA analysis of the mass, scientists are issuing a new opinion.
It was determined that this was actually the egg casing of a short-finned squid. That's really cool because this object appears to be extremely large, but in reality, it was the egg case of an animal that's only about a foot long. So it's possible that such a small organism can lay such a huge egg casing because it's just full of water.
The lesson here is that in the ocean, small things can come in large packages. So our verdict? This is the egg sac of a short-finned squid. But what about that orangey mass in the center? Scientists believe it's probably ink from the female squid who injected it while making the sphere. Another wild story from Norway. It's April 5th, 2019. A resident of Andoy goes outside to film the northern lights when the peaceful scene literally explodes. 4 balls of bright light erupt and seem to drop 4 glowing objects to Earth. Then, watch, just as it starts to fade, 4 more blow up. Now, on one hand, this area is a hotbed for strange legends.
The Arctic is a very remote place. It's a very hard place to live. So what you're going to have is stories that tell of odd lights in the sky, of monsters out on the horizon, of beings from the sky that come down and sort of interfere in the daily affairs of humans.
In Viking lore, the giant wolf Fenrir and his sons will one day eat the sun and moon and make the stars disappear. But as this recent incident plays out in Norway, locals are more inclined to think UFO, especially given the strange color, shape, and pattern of these lights. Emergency lines light up with calls about an invasion, and others don't see aliens. They see a bear, the Russian bear.
The Arctic is a hotly contested area. It's basically rich, very rich in precious metals. Russia has a big presence there. They really want the shipping lanes. And as the ice retreats, Russia advances. Russia's even testing exotic and advanced weaponry.
Russia is building a string of bases in the Arctic, and it recently tested a hypersonic cruise missile, the Kraken, which reached speeds of over Mach 8. So is Norway under invasion from a superpower or supernatural forces? First, is it a UFO? Astronomer and video effects designer Mark D'Antonio compares this to other sightings.
There have been reports of strange halos around UFOs with different color lights, but this is sort of outside that realm.
D'Antonio says classic orb UFOs tend to move very quickly, often with radical angular turns a plane could never make. But these just hang there as their glowing payload falls to Earth. That's anomalous even by UFO video standards. So we ask aviation expert Tim McMillan about the Russians.
You're not seeing the same effect that you would see in a missile test, the different contrails that you would see in the sky, that freezing of propulsion exhaust that's coming off those systems. Whatever these are, they're quickly dissipating into the atmosphere, more consistent with a gas or something that's it's not a solid object.
And dissipating into the atmosphere seems to be exactly the point, according to D'Antonio.
We launch rockets up into space to actually see what happens when we release different types of vapors.
These vapors track the movement of the aurora borealis. And as D'Antonio digs deeper, he learns that NASA was conducting this research at that time using a special technology.
It turns out that this particular rocket is known as a Black Brant that actually launched all these different types of vapors up into the upper atmosphere.
So, our verdict? This was in fact a NASA test. One reason it was such a spectacular show is that the tracers consisted of some of the same chemicals used in fireworks.